Terror by Daphne du Maurier. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Ben Tucker. Terror by Daphne du Maurier. Bridget woke up with a start. Somewhere something had fallen. Perhaps a slate from the roof, or maybe it was only a door banging on the floor above. She did not know this, of course. At 6 years old, it is difficult to reason about strange noises, or about anything that happens in the middle of the night. 9:30 was the same as midnight to Bridget. For a few minutes, she lay awake wondering what it was that had woken her. She no longer felt tired or sleepy. Her mind was alert, and every nerve was on edge. Then she opened her eyes and looked around her. At first, everything seemed black, pitch black, but as she became accustomed to the darkness, the furniture in the bedroom gradually began to take shape. A queer, ghastly shape. This was not the same room as the one in which she had undressed. She saw that Nanny had not come up yet, because the bed was empty. But what is empty? The pillow must have slipped a little, for something bulky lay in the corner by the turned-down sheet. A piece of blanket had become untucked at the side. It was rolled slightly, and stretched across the center of the bed. Yet it was not like an ordinary piece of blanket, this rolled object. It was an arm, a cold, white arm, with no body near it, with no person to whom it belonged. A loose arm hanging from nowhere. Bridget shrank back in her bed and turned her eyes away, but this time they fell on the wardrobe at the end of the room. It looked huge and sinister, far taller than in the daytime. It seemed to stretch as high as the ceiling. And there was a dark, inky black corner just by the side of it. She tried to think of what was kept in that corner, but she could not remember. Surely it had never been there before. Then something creaked. Sweat broke out on Bridget's forehead. Her heart thumped under her little white nightgown. Her body burned, but her feet were icy cold. There, another creak. Again. Her eyes were now glued to the wardrobe, whence the sound had come. Slowly, very slowly, the door opened. The gap grew larger and larger, creaking with every inch. Soon it would swing right open. And what would be inside? Waiting, waiting. She dared not move now, because the slightest sound would tell them that she was there. If she kept quite still with her eyes closed, perhaps they would go away and forget all about her. She lay silent, without a movement, and then, in spite of herself, the dread impulse came over her to look. Her head turned, and her eyes were drawn, as if magnetized, towards the wardrobe. The door was wide open. And inside where Nanny's clothes hung in the daytime, her coat, her mackintosh, her gray costume, were 3 shadowy figures, silent and mysterious. 3 mocking priests with gaunt, dark bodies and no faces. Bridget knew they were watching her. They were waiting for her to move, when they would creep from their hiding place, creep with soft, terrible steps towards her bed, and lift great white hands with thin, hollow fingers. But the silent priests did not move, and she turned her head. She waited for some sound to warn her, some sign to tell her that they were coming to her, but nothing happened. This was worse, this sudden absence of any sound, this dead still quiet. She listened. She could hear silence. A faint humming sound in her ears, then gradually it buzzed louder, until it became a roar, like a mighty wind. She opened her eyes again, and saw that the square dressing table had turned into a square hunchbacked animal, with thin, queer-shaped legs. It stood beneath the window, ready to pounce. The cord of the blind was rattling against the window pane. Someone was trying to get into the room. Yes, at either side of the window, where the curtains generally hung, there were 2 evil women with long black hair. These were more frightening than the priests. These were witches with claws instead of hands. They had the same faces as a woman in a book she had once seen. She remembered the book, a large old book with a brown cover, and the pictures were horrible. Supposing all the pictures had become alive, and were going to steal one after the other through the window. Bridget swallowed. The sound of it seemed to echo through the room, but she could not help herself. She had to swallow again. Her throat was dry. She tasted dust. Everything in the room now took a special shape. The fireplace was a yawning cave, the table a gigantic toad, the chairs were stunted dwarves. If only Nanny would come up. If only she could get out of this terrible room into the kind, warm day nursery, flooded with electric light. What if snakes came down the chimney? Long, black, wriggling snakes, and glided along the floor and coiled themselves round the bedposts. The floor became thick with bodies of dead cats. She had seen one in a gutter once, gray, furry cats. And mice, thousands of headless mice. Bridget began to cry, and the sound of her crying frightened her. The things had heard. They were all coming near her. The priests bowed, the witches waved, the animals crept quietly. The air suddenly became thick with stifling blankets. She was going to be suffocated. The ceiling was sinking down upon her. With a strangled scream, Bridget climbed out of bed. She stumbled across the floor and flung herself panting against the door. "Nanny! Nanny, come quickly!" They were all coming nearer her. Long, distorted shapes grinned at her. Large, crooked hands thrust themselves forward to grasp her. Above her hung great, gaping mouths. Her feet stood in a pool of blood. She was lying on the floor now, screaming into the carpet. Then the door opened and someone turned on the light. It was Nanny. Bridget flung herself upon her, sobbing hysterically. "Nanny, Nanny, take me away. Don't let them get me. I'm so frightened. Don't go away. Oh, save me." The nurse shook her crossly. She was irritated at having to come upstairs from her cup of cocoa in the kitchen, but Bridget's screams had alarmed her, and she was afraid there might be a fire. "What do you mean by making all that noise?" she said sharply. "You ought to be fast asleep hours ago instead of shouting and screaming. I should be ashamed if I were you. I won't have any nonsense, do you hear me?" Bridget's screams rose higher and higher. She begged and pleaded to be taken downstairs. She clutched onto the nurse with clammy, wet fingers. She groveled on the floor. She almost licked her hand. "You stop where you are. Do you understand?" Bridget was picked up and thrust back into her bed. "Will you be quiet at once?" Nurse was gone in an instant, and the light was put out. The door closed behind her, and there was a sound of retreating footsteps. For a moment the child was too amazed to think. Then came realization. She was alone. Long shadows crept across the floor. End of Terror by Daphne du Maurier.